Hare Krishna. So we have very good fortune today that for this session, Faith and Doubt, we have His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he doesn't need any introduction. So actually Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, who is coming from Pune, he has done his engineering from COAP, very prestigious college. And after that, he was one of the ranker in a GRE exam. But then he chose to become a full-time and serving International Society for Krishna Consciousness full-time. So he had been written so many articles. He writes every day GitaDaily.com. In that GitaDaily.com, he writes so many meditations about Gita. He is also part of a Shastrik committee for ISKCON GBC. So where he kind of churn over the various Shastrik topics and gives advice over the leadership of ISKCON. So he had written a lot many books. His books are like, now and then there are so many books comes out, and the latest book is Gita for the CEO. The book table is just behind, Gita for the CEO. And I always look forward for his wonderful articles, wonderful books. It's really enlightening. Whenever we get a chance to hear from him, it's always a very wonderful, enlightening sessions. So we are very grateful that Chaitanya Charan Prabhu has given his time for all of us. So let's welcome His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu for our IYS this meeting by loudly chanting 3 times.
Hare Krishna. Thank you all for coming today. And I'll start with the brief context for the question answer session that we will have. Now, generally when we talk about questions, broadly speaking, questions can come from 2 sources. Questions can come from curiosity. Naturally, we could say, if we are eager to learn something, we want to know. So questions can come from curiosity because there is an eagerness to learn. And questions can come from cynicism. Have you heard this word cynicism? Being a cynic. There's being a critic and there's being a cynic. So curiosity is want to learn, whereas cynicism is want to prove wrong. Want to prove that the other person is wrong. So now, whenever we ask questions, if you see, there are 2 distinct ways in which the spiritual journey can be approached. Now, in general, in spiritual traditions, faith is considered important. Have faith, that is roughly Shraddha, although there is a difference between faith and Shraddha, and we'll come to that. Now, that is one way to begin. And many times in the Abrahamic religions, O ye of little faith, for example, the Bible says that it's important, you of little faith. So Shraddha is considered very important. And now there is also inquiry, curiosity. Athato Brahma Jigyasa. So here there is Jigyasa. Now in the Vedic tradition, quite often there is an emphasis on curiosity. So some people say just be a seeker, don't be a believer. That we should all be seeking, not believing. Now, as a radical contrast, that's fair enough to point it out like that. However, there is a problem in such a simplistic separation. So seeking requires believing. How is that? That if I am seeking something, how can I seek unless I have the belief that there is something worth finding? Suppose somebody is digging for gold. then they are seeking. But before that, they have to have the belief that there is gold underground over here. Or at least there is a possibility that there is gold. Isn't it? So, seeking requires believing that there is something worth seeking. Isn't it? So, without that belief that there is something worth seeking, we cannot really have seeking. Now we could go further and say there's one more faith required. Not only there's something worth seeking, but there's the faith that I can find it. You know, when we are digging for gold, now if I don't have the faith that the instrument that I am using will dig deep enough to find the gold, then there's no use of finding the gold. There's no way to search for gold. But that's another faith that is required. There's something out there is worth seeking, and I am capable of seeking it. That is also a belief that is required. So I may not have all the capabilities, but I can do it. Maybe I need the right tools, but I can do it. So these two, in one sense, beliefs are required. So seeking and believing, there are two visions of looking at it. One is believing takes us in one direction, and seeking takes us in another direction. That, you have to have faith. And many people have the idea faith means shut down your intelligence and just believe. So, seeking and believing takes us in two opposite directions. That's one way of looking at it. Now, this is a very superficial and incomplete view. The actual understanding is that believing and seeking both can take us in the same direction. That, say if we are going to dig for gold, first we believe that there is gold over here, and then we dig for gold. So believing and seeking both can take us in the right direction. So we could say these two are linear, but they are not going in opposite directions, they are going parallel tracks. But it's not just that much. There's something more over here. If both of these are done right, then what happens is, if we consider believing to be one track and seeking to be another track, now I'm putting them as a circle, but what happens is, believing will lead to seeking and seeking will lead to believing. That means the more somebody tries to dig gold and they find some gold, then what will happen? There may be more gold over, let me dig further. So the wonderful thing in Bhakti spirituality is that enlightenment. Enlightenment is both a destination and a journey. What does this mean? It's both a destination and a journey. That we are searching in this world, I'm talking specifically from the Bhakti perspective, devotional enlightenment. But I'm giving this as an example of how believing and seeking go together. So, it's destination in the sense that we understand Krishna is the ultimate reality, is the ultimate source of happiness. There is no happiness as wonderful as that comes from our connection with Krishna. So, in that sense, what happens is, Bahunam janmanam ante jnanavan mam prapadyate. So after a journey of many lifetimes, one comes to the destination of Krishna. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritamashita bhajanti ananya manaso. The mind doesn't go anywhere else. See, nowadays when we spend so much time just scrolling our phone. So what happens is that scrolling, it's not that one particular video we have seen, now it's done. Always looking for something more. The anya manaso. It's not ananya manaso, it's anya manaso. Always looking for something else, something else, something else, something else. But once we connect with Krishna, once we get that devotional experience, this is the ultimate reality. There is no happiness as great as this. There is no reality beyond this. Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tataha. Having said that, it still remains a journey about how Krishna is the ultimate source of happiness. Krishna is the ultimate source of happiness, but how Krishna is the source of that happiness? It's like somebody searching for water and they come to an ocean. Normal oceans are salt water, but suppose this is a sweet water ocean. It can completely quench our thirst. So, in one sense, our search for water has ended. But the ocean is so vast, and there is sweet water of different flavors in different parts of the ocean. So, it's like a nectar ocean. And we can keep sipping different flavors of nectar in different parts of the ocean. So, Krishna is the ocean, the source of water. That is, I don't need to go anywhere else once I have come here. At the same time, that ocean itself has many flavors of sweetness, and we can keep exploring. Thus it is that Krishna says, even those who are enlightened, they keep enlightening each other. Bodhayantaha parasparam. And those who are Buddha, those who are enlightened, they also keep enlightening each other. So in that sense, even for those who are at the highest purificational stage, for them also, inquiry goes on. Inquiry goes on. Because how wonderful Krishna is, how lovable Krishna is, how is Krishna acting in the world? That is something which you can keep learning. So in that sense, believing does not require giving up seeking. So yes, you could say it's a matter of belief. Krishna is the ultimate reality. Krishna is the ultimate source of happiness. At that stage, it's not just a matter of belief, it's also a matter of experience, also a matter of realization. But along with that, still there is seeking. So that's why the point I was making is these two parallel rails. That believing and seeking both go together. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, devotion or the spiritual journey in the devotional path is a dynamic blend of seeking and believing that there is something worth seeking. So I'll conclude with the same part with one last point. So there are two visions of doubt. Now doubt can be seen as a spiritual defect or a spiritual weakness. And in this vision, what is the idea? That we should give up our doubts. That our doubts get destroyed as we grow up spiritually. Vidyate hridaya granthis chidyante sarva samshayaha. Our doubts get destroyed. That's one way of looking at it, and that's perfectly true. But there's another way of looking at it, that it is an intellectual strength. That doubt is an intellectual strength. It is only intelligent people who can doubt. Now, if some advertisement says, drink this water, and our water, some branded company, what says, our water will increase your IQ. Now, if somebody believes that drinking water will increase their IQ, they really need to increase their IQ. So, the idea is, it requires a certain level of intelligence to evaluate whether what I am being promised, what I am being told, is it real or not. So, in the Bhagavatam, in the teachings of Kapila, it is described as doubt is the first function of intelligence. How does it work? I'll talk about these 5 steps. So I started by curiosity and cynicism. I'll come back to that. So there are 5 stages in one's journey. First, doubt. The journey towards understanding. Doubt is this right? When somebody tells us something, that ata samshayo viparyasa. Viparyasa means misapprehension. Misapprehension means that this is not right. Or what I thought was right is not right. It is only a person with intelligence can have doubts and can understand, okay, what I was told is not true. Advertisements don't always tell the truth. That's why in many countries across the world, advertisements cannot be targeted toward children below a particular age, because they don't have the capacity to what they say, do critical thinking, to doubt and to question. Now, whether adults can do critical thinking is also open to question, but at least it's thought that they can do. So there's first is doubt. Is this right? Atha samshayo vipiryasa. Hey, maybe this is not right. Then what happens after that? There are multiple stages, but I'll just focus on this process of cognition, how it happens. Then one starts visualization, imagination. Okay, what may be right? So one starts exploring. What may be right? So if you consider, say, scientific theories, now every theory involves an act of imagination, of visualization. When Newton proposed the theory of gravity, okay, that there's a force which is attracting objects to the earth. Now that force cannot be seen. In many ways, intelligence means seeing that which is not visible. Sometimes people say, I am scientific, I believe only in facts. Seeing is believing. Well, the second step in science is seeing is not believing. Every scientific advancement is about going from the visible to the invisible. Isn't it? So science involves seeing. So Newton observed the apple falling. Some people say, tuck. He didn't observe it, he felt the apple fall on his head. It's probably an apocryphal story. Apocryphal means like a made up or exaggerated story. But whatever it is, there is observing, there is seeing. But after seeing, so in science, the observation part is seeing. But after that, there is a theorization part. When somebody comes up with a theory, that is moving to the invisible. In fact, all scientific advancement, all scientific laws are invisible. In fact, the advancement of science is by looking for invisible principles to explain visible phenomena. So in that sense, science is a journey from the visible to the invisible. And that is the sign of the intelligence. So there are what we see, but there are some invisible principles that help us make sense of what we see. So that is also a sign of intelligence. So we may, in our normal functioning of life, we may say, okay, this world is all that there is. That's all that I can see. But we all seek meaning, we all seek value in our life, and we all seek to live forever. Might there be more to this world? More to reality than this world? That question comes up. Prabhupada says that, okay, normally we'll think of we are a body. But then, might there be something more to me than my body? The doubt, misapprehension. Then there is visualization. Now here visualization, swap, sometimes it is translated as dreaming, but it's not exactly dreaming. Like in dreaming, we use the word dreaming in a sleepy state. In a sleeping state, we think something up. But I have a dream. Martin Luther King said that famously. What does that mean? That I visualize a future where things will be different, where there will be no racial discrimination. There's visualization. How might things be? And then after that, there is ascertaining, or one comes to a level of confirmation, certainty. This is what is right. So now when we are doing visualization, so in one sense, if you say doubt is, okay, this is not how it is. But visualization is, this is how it might be. This is how it is likely to be. And if we consider that particular point, then the implication here will be that visualization is an act of faith. Isn't it? Whenever somebody says this is a law, scientific law, it's an act of faith. You can have experiments to confirm it. But still it's an act of faith. So what the Bhagavatam is giving as the attributes of intelligence is very similar to the scientific process. So that, okay, there is more to reality than what meets the eye. That's the whole basis of science. There are visible fact observations, but there are invisible principles governing those observations. And to the extent we understand that, to that extent we grow even in our scientific understanding. And for that matter, in any kind of understanding. So with this, let's conclude with, say, doubt is one characteristic of intelligence. Buddhi, one characteristic is the intelligence. But when it becomes the sole feature of intelligence, when it is one characteristic of intelligence, it leads to curiosity. Okay, is this how it is like this? Maybe it is not like that. I want to know more about this. How does this work? But when it becomes the sole feature of intelligence, it becomes cynicism. Cynicism means, it's like when we are driving. So doubting and doubt and belief. Or you can say doubt and faith, if you put it. The other word for that. So these two, if we are driving, faith is like the accelerator. And doubt is like the brakes. Now both are required when we are driving. Similarly, doubt and belief, both are required when we are learning. So when we are driving along the road, if the car is going off track, we need a brake. So when we are being told something and doesn't make sense, hey, how does this work? So we have to have some brakes. We have to ask questions. The doubts are like brakes. So just as a car needs brakes for functioning. But imagine somebody tries to drive a car only by pressing the brake. What will happen? They will just make a lot of noise and waste a lot of fuel. The car will just move round and round and round and get nowhere. So, if cynicism is like using only the brakes. So use the brakes when appropriate, when required. But if somebody uses only the brakes, then they will never learn anything. So cynicism where, this can't be right, this can't be right, this can't be right. Our focus is on proving that this is wrong. In media circle, this is called gotcha movement. Gotcha movement means what? You try to get some person whom you want to get into trouble to make some statement which can be then taken out of context and say, hey, this person is provokes, this person is a hater, this person is a biased, prejudiced person, this person is like this person is like that. And that way, if somebody is just looking for a gotcha moment, yeah, I proved you wrong, I proved that you are a terrible person, then one can't really learn much and grow. But if one has curiosity, then doubt is actually very helpful on the spiritual path. If it is one tool, hey, this doesn't make sense, then what might make sense? Let me try to analyze, let me try to understand, let me try to explore. So, some people are going on a very difficult road, very crowded road, very winded road, very hilly road. There they will need to use the brake a lot. And some roads are very smooth. So all of us have a different inner world. Our inner territory is different. Some people are more analytical. So for them, the journey towards understanding goes through rocky and slippery and winding roads. So they will have a lot of doubts, a lot of questions. Some people, their inner world is not so complicated. It's a straight road. So for them, they don't need the brakes much. So how much this doubt-faith balance? How much will be doubt and how much will be faith? That will be individual. It depends on our inner world. So if the inner world is too winding, then the doubts will be more. If the inner world is fairly straight, then what will it mean? The doubts will be less. So Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple and, does anyone know the phrase? Complicated for the complicated. So that is not a criticism of those who are complicated. It just depends on what kind of questions we have. So in this doubt-faith balance, we don't want to go in either of the extremes. Only doubt. What will happen is, we will go nowhere. It's like using only brakes, we'll go nowhere. If we have only faith on the other hand, then we will go anywhere. We will not go where we should be going. It's like a car has no brakes. Then the car just starts getting accelerating in a particular direction. Just go there. You can't do anything to control it. So, when we have that balance of faith and doubt, we'll be able to go where we want to go. Go to a worthwhile destination. Go to a place of deeper, greater, better understanding. So I'll summarize what I discussed. I mainly discussed 3 points. That we started first by, so our topic was broadly the question, role of questions in spiritual life. So I started by talking about how some people say seeking and believing go in opposite directions. So don't be a believer, be a seeker. But we discussed that this is superficial because seeking also requires believing. So the idea is seeking and believing can both go in the same direction. When we are seeking, we are believing that there is something worth seeking. And not only that, if we consider seeking and believing as two ways of functioning, they can mutually reinforce each other. It's like if you're digging for gold. Now, the word digging for gold, if you shorten it, as you make it to a gold digger, that has a negative connotation. Somebody's gold digger is basically somebody who is in a relationship just to exploit somebody for money. So that is not what we are talking about here. But seeking, if we are seeking gold, means we believe that there might be some gold over here. We find it, we become more inspired, we dig more. So in that sense, seeking and believing can both go together. So that was the first main point we discussed. Then we're talking about how on the spiritual journey, it is that even at the stage of a seer, at the stage of the seer also seeking and believing go together. Because enlightenment is both a destination and a journey. Destination in the sense we understand Krishna is the ultimate. Krishna is the ultimate reality. Krishna is the ultimate source of happiness. In that sense, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, one comes to that end, 7.19, 10.8, many verses like that in the Gita. But journey is how Krishna is the ultimate. So, that is something which we keep exploring. So, the example I gave was about an ocean that is the destination for thirst. Ocean of, say, sweet water. Then finding an ocean, that will be the destination. But it can still be the journey because there are different flavors of sweet water in the ocean. And we can keep exploring. We can keep learning, tasting different water. So like that we can keep learning about Krishna. And the last part of it, as seekers, I talked about how doubt is a vital part. Doubt, hey, maybe this is not right. Then misapprehension. That, hey, this is actually not right. Then visualization. Hey, maybe this might be right. Maybe this is how it is. And then nishchaya, confirmation. So in that sense, all these are features of intelligence. So it is only an intelligent person who can have doubts. Now the problem becomes, so if we consider intelligence and doubt, if we consider it as one feature, then that is good. But if we make it the sole feature, then that becomes a problem. So it's like I discussed, we have only doubt and only faith. So it's like only having brakes, we'll get nowhere. Only having accelerator, we'll get anywhere not in where we want to go also. So then we have to find the right balance of faith and doubt for us. And each one of us, this is an individual balance based on what kind of questions we tend to have, and accordingly we learn and we grow. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So Hare Krishna. So now we are opening up for the question and answers. We have already submitted a Google form by which you can post your questions. So the first question I will request Vedant Oram to ask.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much. My question is related to Bhagavad Gita 2.47. I'll just read it out. I have written it. So, if I am not the enjoyer and I am not the cause of the results, then why is it that I am suffering in this material world? I am neither the doer nor the enjoyer. Then why am I sent here again and again in this material world to get back the karma, which in the first place I am not even responsible for? Thank you.
Okay. Are you responsible for asking this question?
Yes.
Okay. So, I'll talk about a broader principle of scripture. So the question is, if we are not the doers, then why are we held responsible? If we are not the enjoyers, then why are we punished for trying to enjoy or for enjoying? So generally, when we look at scriptural statements, there are two extremes we may go towards. One is to absolutize every statement. This is what is the reality, and there's nothing else apart from that. I was in America, in Texas. For us Indians, we think of America as a very materialistic country. For America, we equate with Hollywood. But actually, in the Western world, America is the most religious country. As compared to France or England or even Australia or New Zealand, there's a significant number of religious people in southern part of America especially. So I was going for a program and I saw a quote on a car, a bumper sticker. He says, God said it, I accept it, that settles it. That's all. No questions asked. But God said it. Well, the Bible was written in Hebrew. What exactly did that sentence mean at that particular time? How has it been translated? What exactly did God say? When you accept it, well, is it we are accepting it according to our understanding? Is our understanding actually conclusive? And that settles it. Okay, it settles it for whom? It may settle it for you, but does it settle it for everyone? So when we absolutize, the tendency is we can become fanatical. And the other extreme is to relativize. Oh, that is what those people believed at that time. It is true for them, but actually we are scientifically evolved, we live in a different world. It is not true for us. So just believe whatever you want to believe from scripture and leave everything else. So we relativize it. Now, in between these two is that we need to contextualize. Contextualize means that in a particular context, those statements were made. So, we have to understand the context. So, contextualizing means something significant. What it means, I'll try to explain this. That there is a specific statement for that time. Then there is a universal principle that transcends that particular time. And then there is a specific application of that principle for our time. So in one sense, we need to go up and come down like this. If you want to learn, we go up and we come down. So I'll give a simple example of this. In many times in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna, fight a war, fight. So there was one social critic or social commentator who passed away about a decade ago. So he said India's biggest mistake after independence was India didn't follow the Bhagavad Gita. Very interesting. So that was his, there was obituary in the Times of India. So I saw that when I was going on a flight, somebody reading that newspaper. So I googled and find out. His idea was, if India had followed the Bhagavad Gita, immediately after independence, India would have attacked Pakistan. Krishna said, fight against adharma. So Pakistan is adharma, India is dharma. We'll fight against Pakistan and we'll eliminate Pakistan from the globe. And that is how we should have followed Bhagavad Gita. Now, is that following Bhagavad Gita? Does the following the Bhagavad Gita mean that all of us have to take weapons and fight against whoever we think is our enemies? No, that was a specific application at that particular time. Now, it doesn't mean that we should never fight. Fighting may also be required. But that is not the universal message of the Gita. See, the specific message for Arjuna is fight. But the universal principle is surrender. It's harmony with God's will. That do what God wants us to do. That's why at the end of the Gita, Arjuna does not say, I will fight. He says, Karishye vachinam tava. I will do your will. And what would be doing that will for us? In Kali Yuga, it could be chanting the holy names. Because Kalikale Namarupe Krishna Avatar. It could be doing Krishna's will in the particular family we are, in the particular role we are, in our job. It could be coming to the temple and doing seva. So how God's will is to be done here will be different from how it was done thousands of years ago. So contextualize means understand that in a particular context, a particular statement is made. That does not mean the statement is false. But inside that statement, there is a principle. It is that principle that is universal. So this is a big detour to your question, but it's not a detour, it's like a build-up. So there are places where Krishna says we are not the doers. But there are also places where Krishna says we are the doers. So for example, if you consider not doers, that's 3.27. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasya. But then at the end of the Gita, both 1863 and 1873. 1863, Krishna is telling Arjuna, now you deliberate and do as you desire. Vimrishyaita dasheshena yathechasi tatha kuru. Now kuru means, this is not referring to Kauravas, Kuru dynasty. This kuru refers to do, karma. So you are the doer, do as you desire. And what does Arjuna say? Karishye vachinam tava. I will do your will. So what is the understanding over here? If we are not the doers, then why is Krishna telling Arjuna to do something? Isn't it? So the balanced understanding is given in 1816 in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuyha pashyatya akrita buddhitvan nasa pashyati durmatihi. So he says that we are one doer among many doers. So the illusion is not to think that we are the doer. The illusion is to think that we are the sole doers. That to think that I am the sole doer. Tatraivam sati kartaram atmanam kevalam tuya. Kevalam means only. Atmanam kevalam. To think we are the only doers, that is the illusion. So what does it mean that we are not the doers, or we are not ma karma phala hetur bhur? Do not think that you are the producer of the result. What does that mean? If we consider, normally the principle of karma, we see that I do an action and I get a result. So if I do an action worth 100, I'll get a result worth 100. That's our normal understanding of karma. But many times it doesn't work like that. Sometimes it may be that we may do work worth 100 and we get result worth 10. Isn't it? We work very hard in the project, say in company or in college. We are the person who did 90% of the work. And our name just comes as one name among all the other names. Hey, I deserve more credit for this. So it happens like that sometimes. So life can be unfair. However, if we are honest, we'll also acknowledge that times when we do work worth 10 and we get result worth 100. Isn't it? Let's say we join a project when it's in the final stages. And we join, and then the project becomes successful, and we are considered a part of the successful team. So what is happening? Krishna says that there is past karma coming in the picture also. Sometimes the past karma may be minus 90. And because of that, our present karma may not give the result. And sometimes the past karma may be plus 90. And because of that, we may well get result more than what we deserve. So what is being taught over here is, don't think you are the sole cause of producing the result. Ma karma phala hetur bhur is there. Don't think you are the cause of the result. But at the same time, it also says, Mate sangostva akarmani. Don't be attached to not doing your work. Because our work right now is what is in our control. Say right now, I am giving an answer. Now I am giving the answer according to my intelligence. Now how much of what I am speaking you will be able to understand? Now all of you have different IQ levels. Now all of you may be coming from different backgrounds. Some of you may be more disturbed because of something that has happened. Some of you may be very new right now. And all this philosophy might seem to be just going over the head. So now I can try to explain as well as I can, but I cannot determine how much you will understand. That depends on your previous knowledge, that depends on your interest, your intellectual capacity, so many factors. But all I can do is make sure that I explain as properly as I can. So, mate sangostva karmani. So we should do our work, but we should not be too attached to the results. Because our work alone doesn't bring the results. At the same time, we are responsible for our work. So that's why when Krishna say, if we do something wrong, we are held accountable because we did something wrong. So it's not that when it says we are not the enjoyers, for example. So one is, I talk about we are not the doers. That's understood. Now when it says we are not the enjoyers, but it is said that spiritual life will give us the greatest happiness. Isn't it? So again, the point over here is that we are meant to be the only enjoyers or sole enjoyers. And we are meant to be nothing but sufferers. But we are meant to be participatory enjoyers. Participatory enjoyers means that we are a part of a higher plan. See, like in sports, there is individual sports and there is team sports. Like say, India recently had this chess champion Gukesh. Chess is an individual sport. But if India wins the Cricket World Cup, maybe won the T20 World Cup, that's a group activity, it's a team sport. So in one sense what Krishna is saying is, reality is like a team sport. Like one individual player should not seek glory at the expense of the team. Isn't it? Some player seeks, I want to make a century even if the team loses. Now that, they may make the century but they'll be fired from the team after that. Isn't it? So, they may get some short enjoyment but they will suffer afterwards. Right? You play in such a way. Now there are times when the individual century and the team's victory can go together. There are times when the individual may have to sacrifice their century because they have to score quick runs and you get out while scoring quick runs. But that helps the team to succeed. So basically, when we say we are participatory enjoyers, it is not that we should not be enjoying. But it's like our enjoyment should be a part of the team purpose. Now we are all, because we are parts of Krishna, we are in Team Krishna. So when we act in the mood of service to Krishna, then the enjoyment we get is not something Krishna wants to deprive us of. But this is something which is perfectly fine. But on the other hand, if our enjoyment is taking us from the team success or team purpose, then that is not healthy. So when he says we are not enjoyers, that doesn't mean we have to be sufferers. It means don't make your enjoyment the primary decision-making factor for your life. Like individual, every player in a team wants to succeed. Every player wants to do well. Every player wants to set records. But setting records should not be the primary purpose of a player who is in the team. The primary purpose should be, I want the team to win. And while the team is winning, if I can set records, that's wonderful. Is that clear? Thank you. Good question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanvat Pranam. Thank you for the wonderful session. Prabhuji, my question is is it based on our belief that who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? As according to different scriptures, we have the different visions. Like if we read the Shiv Puran, then there is written that Lord Shiva is the Supreme. And according to the Devi Bhagavad Puran, we can see that Durga is the Supreme. And according to our Vaishnava culture, we say that according to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Brahma Samhita, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So does it believe on which scriptures I believe in to say that who is the Supreme?
Good question. See, there is a black and white conception of reality. And there is a nuanced conception of reality. Black and white, this is black and this is white. So all of reality is divided into straight two categories. But there is an understanding that there is black, there is white, but there are also shades of grey. Isn't it? The shades of grey can often be very confusing. This is often the muddle in the middle. The muddle in the middle. And much of reality exists in these shades of grey. Like, are people good? Are people bad? Well, most people are a complex combination of both. Isn't it? So that's what makes relationships so interesting or so frustrating, depending on how you want to see it. Isn't it? So, now with respect to God, with respect to our understanding of God, so there are multiple ways of looking at it. That the black and white reality is, again, this is the point of view is not to criticize any particular religion. It is just to contrast, to convey the mood of Sanatana Dharma. So, in the Abrahamic religions, there is a very black and white understanding that this is God and this is man. So God exists over here and man exists over here. Man is not bigger, but man is, I'm talking about, there are so many human beings. So, in fact, say in Islam, the idea is that God is so separate from man that God cannot even be depicted. Because depiction is an imposition of human imagination on God. God is so different. Now in the Catholic tradition, they made some concessions. They have these pictures, they have the murals. The Sistine Chapel has God as reaching out to Adam. They have some depictions. So, but the idea is that this is God, this is man. The human divine boundary is this boundary is a completely non-porous boundary. It's a rigid differentiation. Now, in our tradition, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition in particular, but in general, within the Vedic tradition, there is the idea of Bhed and Abhed. So, while there is God and there is humans, we are different, but there is also similarity. So, you could go the human-divine relationship. Human-divine relationship, there is Bheda. Bheda means there is difference. But there is also Abheda. Abheda means God is spiritual, we are also spiritual. That's one way of understanding the Abheda. So the reality is what? The reality is both. So to say that there is only radical differentiation between us and God, that will lead to Abrahamic religions. There is no difference between us and God. That will lead to Mayavad, impersonalism. But the devotional understanding, the teaching of the Gita is that there is both. There is God, we are different from God, and we are similar to God also. Now, taking this thing forward itself, when it comes to the conception of God, so there is an understanding that when we humans, or rather, let's put it not conception of God, when it talks about, let's put first we'll talk about connection with God. When there is to be connection with God, there are two distinct factors. There is the divine revelation. That is God reaching downwards to us. And then there is the human conceptualization. That is we reaching out to God. So now, is human conceptualization required? Well, we can say, of course. Unless we explore, is there some higher reality? Even if God comes in front of us, we will not be able to benefit. Like Duryodhana came in front of Krishna, and Duryodhana even was shown the Virat Rupa of Krishna. And Duryodhana said, oh, this is just Krishna. He just showed some magic tricks. He had his own peculiar reasoning. He said, since my childhood, I was a responsible prince. I had so much work to do. Krishna was just an idle person in Vrindavan. He had nothing to do, so he performed some austerities and got some powers. That's how he can show some forms. If I had time to perform austerities, I could have shown bigger forms than Krishna. So he just dismissed it. So just the divine revelation is not enough. The human conceptualization, the human openness, the human inclination also has to be there. So now, which is more important? We could say there is Krishna who is the ultimate reality. The Bhagavad Gita reveals it very clearly. At the same time, the Gita does not have like a binary approach to God. That either you accept this as God or you're going to go to hell. It is not that. If you cannot accept this being as God, then there are alternatives. So the idea is that you can, according to your conceptualization, you can worship. So yo yam tanum bhaktaha shraddhayarchitum icchati tasya achalam shraddham tam eva vidhamyaham. Krishna says that as you desire to worship, I will give you faith accordingly. So the idea is, just to understand this combination now, divine revelation and human conceptualization. Have any of you heard of this term, the prodigal son? What does it refer to? Anyone knows? Sorry? In the Bible, yeah. What is there in it? Okay.
It's a parable where a boy sort of leaves the inheritance of his father and he chooses to squander it. The description is I think he sleeps with the swine, he uses it to enjoy, drinks, makes merry, but when he returns back, practically a pauper, his father still accepts him.
Yes, good, thank you. So it's a story which conveys God's unconditional love in their tradition. That we leave God like a child who leaves his father, takes away his inheritance and squanders it. Yet when he comes back, the father is delighted. Welcome back, he says. So that is the idea of God's love for us. Now that is true, but that's only the partial truth. Say this is the kingdom of the Father. And this is a prince who has gone away from the kingdom. So according to the Bible, this is more the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, not Jesus, the New Testament. That when he comes back, he's welcome back. But what the Gita says is that God is not just waiting for us to come back. God is working for us to come back. So the king is here and the king wants the prince to come back. But when the prince is not ready to come, the king sends a minister. And the king says, through the minister, the king conveys his wishes. Okay, if you don't want to listen to me, you don't want to be with me, at least be with my representative. Be with my representative, and what will happen is, slowly by this, the prince comes back to the kingdom. He takes up a job with the minister. The prince is not in the palace, but the prince is at least back at home, back in the home country. So is indirectly under the care of the father. So like that, what Krishna says is, Krishna is here and we are here. Now ideal is we have a relationship with Krishna. This is the ideal, this is natural situation for us. This is Krishna and here is we. But if we are not ready for this, Krishna doesn't say, if you're not ready to surrender to me, go to hell. He says, no, if you can't do that, you go to a minister. And Krishna says that actually it is I who will give power to the minister, so that the minister can give the desired things for us. And Krishna also says it is I who will give faith to you in that minister. So this is Krishna's selflessness, that his focus is not on establishing his position. His focus is on elevating our situation. Okay, rather than being faithless and godless, have faith in something and be elevated by that. So, in this understanding, the idea is Krishna's focus is not on his position, establishing his position. That is his focus, but that is not his primary focus. His primary focus is, it's elevating our position, elevating our situation. That, okay, you come to a better place. So if we can come to him directly, Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanamant. Just come to me. Understand that I am everything, come to me. But if you can't, then you can do this also. 7:20 to 23. So the whole system of the worship of the Devatas is established for those who cannot directly surrender to Krishna. Now, Madhvacharya explained that tasya tasya achalam shraddham. I give faith. So how does Krishna give this faith? This is through Shastra. There are Shastras which describe the glories of Shiva, the glories of Durga. And through those scriptures, their faith gets increased. Now, Srila Prabhupada also talks about the super soul being present in the heart. I, as the super soul, strengthen people's faith. So, this is a nuanced system. It's a complex system. The focus is not on God's position. The focus is on our elevation. So, just to conclude this point, there are these two distinct schools of thought. There is monotheism and there is polytheism. What is polytheism? Yes, there are many gods, isn't it? I was in America, in the Western world, there are a lot of Indians who are there now. And there's a cultural awakening among the Indians. India is rising on the world's geopolitical stage. So they also want to be proud of being Indians. 10 years ago, people were embarrassed to be Indians. Now they want to be proud. But many of them are completely unaware of what is the actual teaching of the Vedic tradition. So one devotee in America sent me a cartoon. He said, one American kid is asking an Indian kid, hey, why do you people worship so many gods? This Indian kid scratches his head and he says, we like to keep backups. So, he's coming up with his own understanding. But it's not that if this god doesn't work, we'll worship this god. That is a polytheistic idea. That's not what the actual reality. It is that there is multi-level theism, Multi-level theism means, yes, there is one God, but that one God manifests at different levels, through different levels of manifestation. So yes, there is one God, but there are also devatas. And the devatas are administrators in the universe, but they are also arranged so that they can also receive worship. For those who are not ready to worship Krishna, they can be worshipped. So is it subjective? Yes, it is subjective. But does that mean there is no objective reality? No, it does not mean that. According to one's level, one may be attracted to a particular deity, they can worship that deity, and they can be elevated by that. The ideal situation is, by coming to the kingdom while serving the minister, gradually the prince should start thinking, okay, is there someone beyond the minister? Is there a king over here? Is my minister also serving someone? And actually I have a relationship with that person, so let me connect with that person. So we should come to that level. Whether we come or don't come, that depends on the situation.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much for wonderful class, Prabhuji. My question is about, like you mentioned, Prabhuji, that everybody's inner world is a different. Somebody's inner world is a complex, somebody's inner world is very clear. So that kind of doubts and things are there. So I want to understand, like, so how to understand, so how much like our inner world is a complex, or how much it is a clear, because the inner world, if it's a clear, then the journey toward the goal or journey toward the destination, I think, becomes easier.
Okay. So there are two parts to this question. How do we understand the nature of our inner world? And if the inner world is clear, does it make the destination easier or the journey easier? Yes. Well, let's start with the second one. Not necessarily. It can be. People who are analytical, they can explain better to other people who are analytical. So if somebody has a lot of questions, they may have to go through the trouble of getting answers to those questions. But once they get answers, they can also give answers to others. So nothing in this world is a pure blessing, and nothing in this world is a pure curse. So there is an analytical tendency. Is it a curse? Well, yes. We may feel that I don't seem to have the simple devotion and the devotional attraction that some other people seem to have. But then, it's not just a curse, it can be a blessing. When we analyze, we study, we understand, then we can explain better. And you will see that there is a principle in bhakti that we should seek association. But it is not just association, we should seek sajatiya sangha, like-minded association. So if somebody is more analytical and intellectual, then they need to associate with those who are also analytical and intellectual. Hear those devotees' classes, ask questions to them, and get answers. And by that, we will be able to grow. Now, that analytical faculty will open some doors of service for us, but it will also close some doors of service for us. That's why I said nothing is a pure blessing, nothing is a total curse. So whatever is the kind of mind that we have, whatever is the kind of nature that we have, we use it in Krishna's service. So even in the past, see, the Brahmanas were more analytical, intellectual. The others were not that analytical, intellectual. The Vaishyas, Shudras, this is not based on birth, it is based on attributes. So those who were of that nature, they accepted what the Brahmanas taught. So overall the atmosphere was pious. But it is, in the past, books were written by scholars for scholars. Most people did not have the capacity to have books. Before the printing press came about, after the Gutenberg's invention, books were a very, very big rarity. So most people would learn from the oral tradition, where those who were Brahmanas, they would speak and they would teach. But so reading requires serious endeavor. Not everybody is capable of reading seriously. Hearing and learning is relatively much easier. So whatever is our nature, we use that nature. Now that doesn't mean everybody is analytical is actually a Brahmana. We shouldn't think, I am a Brahmana and you are a Shudra. We should start thinking like that. We should say that in bhakti, we are all trying to serve Krishna, and that service to Krishna should be our primary focus. But while trying to serve Krishna, whatever the nature we have, we use it in Krishna's service. And as far as how do we know where we are going too much? We need to see phalena parichayate. That is my intellectual analysis leading to devotional either connection or devotional contribution. So our buddhi, our intelligence, with that we do analysis. It should lead to devotional connection is for ourselves. We become more immersed in Krishna. And there is contribution. We are able to serve Krishna better. So from my early days, curiosity was something which I had from my childhood itself. When I came to bhakti also, I used to ask a lot of questions. And some devotees liked the questions that I asked. One senior devotee, he told me, no, Chaitanya Charan is Prashna Sagar, the ocean of questions. Then I was a little doubtful. Prabhu, is that a compliment or a criticism? So he said that, yeah, it's a compliment. I appreciate how eager you are to learn. But then another devotee, he was also one of my Shiksha Gurus. I asked him questions. He said, Chaitanya Charan, I think you are forgetting we are in the Bhakti Marg, not the Jnana Marg. So then I realized that I can't ask him questions. That's just not his nature. Does that mean I should not have questions? Well, it's not that I consciously think of questions to ask others. Whenever I hear, I get questions. Even now, I have many unanswered questions. And that curiosity drives me on. So for some people, their spiritual journey, for them, it is driven by certainty. This is right and this is wrong. But for some people, their spiritual journey is driven by curiosity. And yeah, this is what I know is wonderful, but there is so much more I want to know. And as I learn something new, my understanding of what I thought I knew may also get revised and refined. And I'm open to that. So we need like-minded association. So the test is that when we are when we are analyzing, what is the result? Does it lead to greater absorption in Krishna? Does it lead to a greater capacity to serve others in our service to Krishna? So in one class I said, when we take darshan, we can, and I was used to do that for many years. Every day I would memorize one verse and I would offer that verse as a prayer to the Lord when I would take darshan, in darshanarthi in the morning. So I suggested this, we can do this, memorize verses and offer verses to the Lord. And we can be very absorbed because we are memorizing the verse and seeing the Lord and connecting the two. So after a couple of days, one devotee came to me and he said to me, I tried what you said. In the past, when I would hear the kirtan, I would hear the Govindamadi Purusham, I would see the deities, I would feel so much devotion. But now I am in so much anxiety to try to remember the verse that I have memorized, that all the devotion goes away, it's filled with anxiety only. So for him, that connection was not through the buddhi. Now for me, it is through buddhi. That's why a principle in bhakti is anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam. Accept what is favorable and avoid what is unfavorable. So we have to see how much intellectual engagement is favorable for us. When does it become unfavorable for us? So, when I was introduced to bhakti, I was very interested in science and spirituality. I had a very scientific bent of mind. And it was the scientific presentation of bhakti, the evidence for reincarnation, the design argument, other arguments about the existence of God, all that's what was attracted me, inspired me. But after 5, 6, 10 years in bhakti, I started noticing, I was reading a lot of science and spirituality kind of books. Then I started noticing that it was intellectually stimulating, but it was not very devotionally nourishing for me. I could answer questions which people were asking me, but that didn't lead to me feeling nourished and connected with Krishna. So I realized, okay, at a particular phase in my life, I needed that. Now also I'm aware of the science and spirituality scene, but that's not my priority right now. So we have to see what is favorable, what level of analysis is anukul to our bhakti, and we do it to that level. Okay?
Thank you for the wonderful class, Prabhuji. So, common argument from a scientific perspective is that over the time, it's hard to believe that a holy place is mentioned in the scriptures, like Vrindavan or any other places, that could have been existed as described. And since so many time have passed, so some may argue that these places are man-made. Just to protect their faith, they have made these places. So how to reconcile the authenticity of these holy places?
So, can you elaborate? What about the holy places? Say, for example, you go to Vrindavan. Are you saying Govardhan is a man-made hill? Or that the story that Krishna lifted Govardhan is a man-made story? Or what about the places what are you saying is man-made exactly?
Just to protect their faith from the itihasas or
No,
Puranas.
that part I got, to protect the faith. But which part is man-made? Are you saying the whole idea that this place has something holy about it, or specific aspects of that place which are considered to be supernatural, that they are an imagination? What is it you're talking about as imagination? Or made up?
Just pastime places or the...
Okay. So, now... the question, I'll repeat it, that say when we go to holy places and we have so many places where this is the place where Krishna did this, or this is the place where Lord Ram did this. So is it that actually it happened at that place, or is it something which was made up, as you rightly said? So there are multiple things to understand over here. See, there is history. History is the account of what happened. Now there is historicity. Historicity is the historical authenticity. That this is a historical reality. This actually existed. So for example, history of India. You can say India got independence at so and so time. India was ruled by the Mughals at a particular time. That's history of India. Now you can say historicity of Krishna. So that means, did a person named Krishna actually exist? So historicity is historical authenticity. So for example now, in Maharashtra there is the story of Shivaji Maharaj. Now, is he historically existing? Of course, there's no doubt about that. But then, there are many stories about his valor, which the specifics are questioned. So, for example, when he met Afzal Khan. So, we know that Afzal Khan tried to stab him first. And after that, Shivaji Maharaj had this tiger claws. You know this story, many of you? He had this tiger claws, which had concealed under a cloth, and he stabbed him with that. So, now the Muslim version of the story is that actually Afzal Khan came in good faith. And Afzal Khan never stabbed him. It was Shivaji Maharaj who betrayed him. Which is true. Now here, did the incident happen? Did the two of them meet? Yes, they met. Now exactly what happened, it will depend on who you are going to believe. Now the followers of Afzal Khan may say that actually he was betrayed. The followers of Shivaji Maharaj say that he was attacked first. So there is a difference between history and historical authenticity. Historical authenticity is exactly what happened. There are stories about, in every tradition, every country, it has the idea of great kings. And those great kings, they said one king fought against 100 warriors, 500 warriors, 1,000 warriors. Now there is the story of Prithviraj Chauhan who defeated Ibrahim Lodi 18 times, 16 times and forgave him. Now as far as the historical account goes, there are two battles. They are well documented. After that, is it true? Maybe it is true, but it's very difficult to find historical documentation for it. So the point I'm making is, somebody could be a historical figure, but the specifics of their activities, those may be difficult to verify. You are getting the difference here? The historicity of the person and the historicity of the specific activities of that person. So these two are different things. Now as far as Krishna, his historicity is more or less accepted by mainstream scholars. We have the archaeological findings of Dwarka. There are many ways, there are mainly 4 ways. There is archaeology, which talks about, we have made a lot of archaeological finds. Within that, there is an increasing field is marine archaeology, where off the coast of modern Dwarka, we have found the remains of an ancient city. Then there is architecture. There is ancient architecture which describes, there are not only pictures of Krishna, there are teachings of Krishna, there are various things associated with Krishna that are described. Then there is literature. Now, in the literature, there are this pro-literature and there is anti-literature also. Anti-literature means that there are books written by Jains and Buddhists and people outside the Vedic tradition who were against the Vedic tradition. And they have criticized the character of Krishna. And Krishna did this and he was immoral, and Krishna did this and he was wrong over here. But none of them have questioned the historicity of Krishna. Krishna is, they say, he was real, but he did this wrong. So that is actually more credible evidence than the pro-evidence. Isn't it? From an outsider perspective. And then there is a whole new field called archaeoastronomy. Archaeoastronomy means that with computer calculations now, we can know what was the star constellation of celestial bodies 500 years ago, 1000 years ago, 5000 years ago. Because the way the planets move and the celestial objects move, that is more or less predictable, mathematically predictable. So in the sacred texts, there are descriptions that there was this eclipse that formed at this particular time. And after so many days after the eclipse, there was a Amavasya. There's a no moon day, there's a full moon day. Or there's another eclipse after this. So and the time duration is given. So we can go backward and try to find out when was a time in human history when we in India could observe 2 eclipses. Say one solar eclipse, one lunar eclipse. And with a particular time duration between them. So in the Mahabharata, there are a lot of description of celestial constellations and their arrangements. So through archaeoastronomy, there's a strong indication that the Mahabharata was, what it's describing is a reality around what happened 5,000 years ago. So this is the historicity of Krishna, in the sense of the person Krishna. Now with respect to specific activities and your question, specific places. So now, can we know exactly that this was the place where this happened? Well, there are 3 factors over here. First is that India is a tropical country. Tropical country means because of the heat, things get damaged very quickly. That's why even texts don't survive. In colder climates, the manuscripts, they can survive much better. In the tropical climate, they don't survive very well. Now, India is also an underdeveloped country. Underdeveloped country means we have not really put a lot of funds in archaeological research. Because we didn't have the money. We were relatively, after years of exploitation by foreign rulers, India was not in a very financially good condition. So now some investment is happening. Then beyond that, for the first 50-60 years, the Indian government was quite biased against religion in general and Hinduism in particular. There are reasons for that. We had the partition which happened because of religion. Then Gandhiji was assassinated and that was blamed on a Hindu extremist leader. So religion in general was sidelined and Hinduism was especially sidelined. So because of that, the government also adopted socialism, which is not aggressively atheistic, but is definitely subtly atheistic. So very little research was done in this direction. So now, right now, it is a matter of faith. That, okay, this particular place, this particular thing happened. But it is not just a matter of faith. In the sense that there are, for example, in Kurukshetra, when there is some archaeological study done in Kurukshetra, there are findings of things which look like ancient weapons, which are buried deep under the ground. Now, exactly whether 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, they're certainly very old. They're pre-Christ. So, there are different ways in which the weapons can be, their age can be determined, and there's sometimes debate about that. I don't want to go into that. But the specifics of the place, there are two ways of look. I'll conclude with this now. That, see, in general, if we consider the tradition, you can say that the tradition, if we are a part of the tradition, we look at the saints in the tradition. Now, many of the saints, they renounced the world. They had no selfish agenda. It is not that they were telling a story so that they could win an election and get power. They had already renounced the world. So for them, what motive is there to create an elaborate myth? Now we say, but still they may not want political power, but they want theological power. No, because if the particular story that they are telling, if people believe it, then they will be considered as saints. Well, that's a bit cynical. Those who already renounced the world, those who don't, they're not even looking for fame. Many of the great saints, now not everybody in that tradition is saintly, but in the tradition, there have been definitely very saintly people who didn't care for the world. So they have focused on certain places. They have worshipped certain places. And so it's unlikely that they would have a motive. So could they have just the motive of building a religion? Well, it's unlikely in the sense that they were not really interested in building a religion. Their interest was primarily loving God and becoming absorbed in God. If you just look at the saintly teachers, saintly people's lives. But even if we accept that, in the tradition, there are places, if somebody can't accept this, and this is the actual place where this happened, still what is the important thing? So even if we say the places, are they accurately the same? If somebody says, I can't accept it. Still, the important thing is the remembrance. That it is, Krishna says, we have to remember him. And for the purpose of remembrance, there are spiritual stimuli. So this brings to the point which you started with. Could it all be made up? I would say that the chances of that are low. From a purely logical perspective, it is possible that archaeological research is done, say, in Vrindavan, in Kashi Vishwanath. So, for example, Ayodhya, the whole idea that there's a temple below the mosque, that was just rejected most of the time. But then, when actual research was done, they found there was a temple. Now, how much deep did they dig? How many temples were there? How many times were the temples destroyed? Maybe if we had dug more, we could have found more things. So, in the holy places in India, it is actually very difficult to do archaeological research. First of all, there are no funds, and there are the faith of religious people involved over there. So they don't want those places to be dug up now, just for the archaeological purposes, for proving something to someone. So those become more like heritage places, where we preserve them more than excavate them further. So it is possible strategically to do some research. In the Middle East, there were, even 50 to 100 years ago, many of the places that were associated with Jesus, they were considered to be just mythological. But in the Middle East, a lot of research has shown that those places actually existed. Now, the advantage over there was that although Muslims and Christians fight with each other, they all have a common ancestry. So what is called Moses in the Bible is called Musa in Quran. So both of them had the shared interest in proving the historicity of those places. So the research was done with a significant amount of funding. So who knows, some research can lead to finding like that. But if somebody can't accept that, that's okay. The important thing is that we want to have remembrance. So there is a trans-historical reality. And the trans-historical reality manifested at a particular time in history, at a particular place in geography. Now, whether it happened at exactly a particular point in history, at this particular point in history, whether it happened at this particular place in geography, that may or may not be the most important thing. For some people, it may be extremely important. For some people, it may not be more important. So, this is the material domain, the spiritual domain. This is the domain under time. This is the timeless domain. So Krishna from this domain descends at a particular time and a particular place. Now, our purpose is not to go back here. Our purpose is to go up here. Our purpose is not to turn back the clock. Our purpose is to turn on our spiritual compass so that we can rise up. Now, going back can help in going up. This is the place where Krishna had appeared. This is the place where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had appeared. So, going to those places can inspire within us the conviction or the attraction by which we can raise our consciousness up. For some people, going back may be anukul. That means diving into the history and delving into the historicity. For some people, it may not be anukul. So, generally speaking, we could say that the Vrindavan is a place. As far as human history goes, there has been a very rich tradition of Krishna Bhakti in Vrindavan. Not as far as human history goes, as far as the historical record goes, several millennia, you could say. Krishna Bhakti has been very strongly there in Vrindavan. Now, with so much foreign aggression, with so much devastation, how much can our archaeology actually prove? So I think there, rather than being cynical, we can just put it in a, if we can't accept it, put it in a case of suspending judgment. Maybe this is the actual place, maybe this is not the actual place, but the actual point is remembering Krishna. And if going to that place acts as a stimulus for remembering Krishna, that's wonderful. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Any other question? Is Sunil Kumar here? Yeah. You had a question. Somebody else has some questions, please write down on a sheet and you can pass them with your name written.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. How it happened that many times signs seem to contradict scriptures, although signs should always be in unison what scriptures tell.
Well, I have a problem with both the parts of the question. First of all, why should science be in unison? And in which parts is there a contradiction? So if you can make it a little more specific, then I'll try to answer the question.
Okay, so this Darwin theory, Prabhuji, this entirely goes against what our evolution, our scriptures tell. So that is entirely different.
Okay,
to that. Yeah.
that's a specific question. So the first thing is that can science and scripture have to always go together? I won't say it's necessary, because they are perceiving reality from different perspectives. See, science is the study of matter. It's a study of material things. Scripture, its focus is on the study of what matters. See, Arjuna did not come to Krishna to learn about archery. Parikshit Maharaj did not come to Shukdev Goswami to get a PhD in cosmology. Both of them were concerned about what matters. Arjuna was concerned, what is the right thing for me to do? Pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda cheta. For Parikshit Maharaj, what is the right thing for a person who is about to die? So the focus of the study is different. And because the focus is different, so what will be perceived will also have significant differences. So it's like, say, if there's a sick child, there's one way the doctor studies the sick child, and there's the way the mother looks at the sick child. Now both of them are looking at the same child, but for the doctor, the child is primarily a biological machine that is malfunctioning, isn't it? So for the mother, the child is a person to be loved. Now the two will have different ways of looking at the child. Now of course there can be overlap, and there should be some overlap, but there's a difference. The doctor will be concerned more about, okay, the platelet count and this measure and that ESR and so many other medical measures. The mother will be concerned more, oh, my child is in pain, what can we do about it? Isn't it? Now, is that a concern of the doctor? Yes, it is a concern. But is that the primary concern? How is the child feeling? Well, that is one concern. Isn't it? The doctor may say we have to give an injection. That may cause the child a little more pain, but that's good for the long run. The mother doesn't want to cause the child the pain. The mother will accept that this is what is required. So, there can be two different ways of looking. Like in science, there is the idea of the right brain and the left brain. Now, people can look at the same reality from different perspectives. Some can look for more from an analytical perspective. Some look for a more aesthetic or intuitive perspective. So, because science and scripture are looking at things from different perspectives, there will naturally be differences in focus. And if you consider, say, another example with the map of a country. So now there can be a physical map of a country. That means here there's a river, here there's a plateau, here there's a mountain. Now there could be a political map of a country. Now, okay, this taluka ends over here, this district ends over here, this state ends over here. Now you could say there are some broad similarities. But the more detail you look at the physical map and the more detail you look at the political map, there could be many, many more differences. And the deeper you go, the more you go into specifics, the more will be the differences. So in that sense, the perspective matters a lot in focusing on reality. So with this background, so there will be differences. Another point is, it says, the world says Krishna is achintya. Achintya means he is, not that we can't think about him at all, but he is not a prisoner of our conceptions. He is beyond our capacity to conceive. And that means even the material world, which is the energy of Krishna, is also achintya. That is also difficult to conceive. And this is not just Shastra saying this. Actually, even science is saying this now. They may not use the word achintya, but what science is saying is, no one model is enough to explain all of reality. So for example, in physics, now this is a very bare bones explanation. In physics, there are basically the theory of relativity is there, and there is quantum physics. Now both of them have very different visions of reality, of physical reality itself. Einstein has famously said that Einstein and Planck just didn't get along with each other. Einstein is a proponent of relativity, Planck and all those, the whole series, they were proponents of supporters of quantum physics. So Einstein is supposed to have said, he said, I would like to believe that the moon continues to exist even if I am not looking at it. He said, that's obvious, it continues to exist. But according to quantum physics, it depends on the observer. So basically, now which is the reality? See, relativity works in its own way. In the areas where we use relativity, it works fabulously. And quantum physics, much of our computing and much of our technology is based on quantum physics, also works. So both of them work, but both of them don't work together. So what do scientists do? They're just pragmatic. Wherever relativity works, they use it. Wherever quantum physics works, they use it. And again, I'm simplifying things, but that is a broad reality. That, is there one model that can explain all of it? So now physics is only studying physical reality. And even in understanding physical reality, there is no one model that explains everything. So then what to speak of all of reality? So therefore, there will be differences. And we should not feel insecure. Just that if science is telling us one thing and scripture is telling us another thing, one of them has to be right and the other has to be wrong. Both of them could be talking from different perspectives. So I could go further and give many more examples of this point of perspective, but I think I have done enough at this particular point. Now going to evolution specifically, understanding the meaning of terms or defining terms is very important. Now evolution can refer to observed phenomena. Evolution can be referred to an inferred mechanism. And evolution can be an ideology. So there are the word evolution itself, if you look in physics or you look in science, it's not there's not one clear definition of evolution. Most of what modern evolution is very different from Darwin's theory evolution. Because at the time of Darwin, genetics was not known at all. So now most of evolution, or almost, there can be no evolution without genetics. So that's why Darwin's idea of evolution was a morphological accumulation of changes. But that is not true anymore. So the evolution, so let's look at these three levels. Observed phenomena means that we do see that, you can say breed apples in particular ways. So you can have a small apple, you can have a large apple. Nowadays we have dogs. Dogs are like the species in nature that humans have tampered with the most. So dogs were actually originally related with wolves. But now we have tiny poodles. The pugs, they call them, they cannot exist in nature. They are so tiny and vulnerable, they may be very cuddly for human beings, but they can't exist in nature on their own. So, we can see that through interbreeding, some change is brought about. There's no need to consider that to be false. That's just a fact of life. One of the 64 skills that Krishna learned in his Gurukul was plant breeding. That you take a rose of red color, you take a rose of green color, you bring them together, you get a hybrid rose. So this is perfectly okay. That there's an observed phenomena that we change the conditions to some degree, and the life forms change, whether it's through breeding or through environment, whatever it is. So there's natural selection. Now many biologists are going towards sexual selection. That which species survives or which particular members survive. So those members survive, those who are sexually selected by their partners. That those females will survive, their genes will survive, those who are actually impregnated by males. Or those males will survive whose seeds are accepted by the females. So sexual selection is also a factor. But the point is, so what we are talking about breeding is something like sexual selection, but it's more humanly done. Now, inferred mechanism. So one is changes happen in nature. They can happen naturally, they can be done through human agency. That is acceptable. Now from there, we move towards, there is a mechanism by which these changes happen, and that is called evolution. So now the jury is out for this. Is there evidence for evolution? Well, if you are talking about changes as observed phenomena, that is there. But is there a coherent theory of evolution? Well, even evolutionists acknowledge that there are problems with the theory. That what is the extent of change that is required, neither like the mechanism of how it exactly happens, as well as the theoretical explanation of how it can happen. So for example, we talk about genetic mutations leading to new species coming up. But most mutations are destructive. So is there a theory that this is how things happen? Well, it's not there. Now, could it be there? I'm not saying it's not possible. Right now, even among mainstream evolutionists, there are many different variants of how evolution occurs. But there's no one universally accepted theory. This is the mechanism by which evolution occurs. But even if we say it is true, does that in itself contradict scripture? Well, it depends. We can look at it from two perspectives. One is conceptual and the other is literal. See, conceptually, if God exists and God has created all species with the capacity to evolve, then that does not prove that God does not exist because the species have the capacity to evolve. It shows how intelligent God is, that God has invested the species with intelligence. Just like we have the AI models now. So the AI models are continuously learning. So if I use a transcription software, and if I use it continuously and I train it to my profile, it gets customized to pick up my particular pronunciations and get them right. So just because it is learning based on how I am training it, does that mean that that transcription software did not have a designer? No, actually, that this has self-learning capacity points to the greater intelligence of the software maker. So in that sense, evolution itself, even if it exists as a mechanism, it does not necessarily disprove the existence of God. Now that's from a conceptual perspective, so it is not unacceptable. Now from a literal perspective, many of the narratives that are described in scripture, say life came, Brahma was the first being, and from Brahma the Manus came, the Prajapatis came, and all that sequence is described. Now all that is described not on earth. Now we say scripture has a particular narrative of how life came about, and evolution has a different narrative of how life came about. So scripture is describing higher domains. How it came out on earth, I'm not saying that it came about by evolution. I'm saying that these two are not intrinsically incompatible. So this is whether the evidence for evolution is sufficient. That is open to question. And to whatever extent I have studied, yes, right now it is like evolution. Scientists just can't accept the idea of God. And they have their reason for not accepting the idea of God as a creation. Because then it opens them to the whole, different religions have their own origin stories of how things came about. And in Christianity there is a young earth movement. We said the whole earth came about 6,000 years ago. And life began 6,000 years ago. So scientists have a strong reservation to bringing in God as a causative element, as a causal factor within the explanation of science. So there are genuine evolutionists who acknowledge that there are problems in the theory of evolution, but they say this is the best explanation we have right now. So now some people may find that evidence sufficient, some people may not find it sufficient. I would leave it up to them. The key point I'm making over here is literal, it is not irreconcilable. I'm not saying that it is true. So if somebody has studied evolution and they feel that evolution is true, then just because evolution is true does not mean scripture has to be false. Or just because for them to accept scripture, they do not have to reject evolution. This is at the level of mechanism. Now, at the level of, so I would say, at the level of observed phenomenon, no problem. At the level of mechanism, it depends. Some people may find it evidence sufficient, some may not find it sufficient. At the level of ideology, there is an absolute no. So what has happened is that evolution has been weaponized by atheists to beat God out of the academic world. So basically, see, science is a way of looking at the world. Science is a way in which we look at the world, and then there's a scientific method we say. And by that we gain a certain knowledge. So now science can be used by theists to try to prove the theistic worldview, and science can be used by atheists to prove the atheistic worldview. So in many ways, evolution is seen as more supportive of the atheistic worldview. And that's why atheists are very aggressive about it. But no, science and atheism are two different things. Because science focuses on observable reality. So one of the fundamental principles of science is science looks for natural explanations for natural phenomena. By natural, we can use the word material. So when Newton saw the apple fall or felt the apple fall, Newton believed in God. In fact, Newton was a monk for most of his life. A lot of biblical research he did to try to prove the historicity of the Bible. So religion was a big part of his life. But when he saw the apple fall, at that time, what made the apple fall? He was not looking for God as an explanation. He was looking for a mechanism, a natural explanation for a natural phenomena. Now, of course, he accepted that the mechanism of gravity is ultimately created by God. But he was looking for that explanation at the level of natural phenomena. So if an event is happening, say event is the fall fall of an apple. So there could be a natural explanation to it, and there could also be a supernatural explanation for it. And both can work together. The apple fell because of gravity, the apple fell because of God's plan. And God's plan works through gravity. So then, so God has designed the mechanism of gravity. Om Purnam Adha Purnamidam. So there is this phenomena of causal completeness in science. That all natural phenomena should have natural explanations. And that's fine. Ishopisha said this material world is also complete. So if somebody wants to explain the material world without referring to God, they can do it to some extent. They can do it in terms of mechanisms. But when it goes to origins, this is the mechanism by which things are happening right now. But where did this mechanism come from? That becomes very difficult. For scientists, whether they accept the Big Bang theory or whatever, where did the laws of nature come from? Where did the laws of physics come from? That is very difficult for them to explain. So the point I'm making is that natural explanations and supernatural explanations both can go together. But when it becomes when atheists use science, or for that matter, they use evolution to try to reject atheism. So what they are saying is the natural explanation is not true, is the only true explanation. There is no supernatural explanation. This is the only right explanation. So that is atheists weaponizing evolution for their purposes. So what we need to understand is that we have to avoid both extremes. That science, spirituality, can there be some level of harmony? Harmony doesn't necessarily mean both of them tell us exactly the same thing. But both of them give space for each other. This is the area where science operates, this is the area where spirituality operates. So if we say only natural explanations, that means we have to have only material explanations for everything. This will become not just atheism, but this will become atheistic fanaticism. That means they are saying that how do you know that there is no other designing principle or organizing principle for the mechanism? There is no scientific experiment that can ever disprove the existence of God. Isn't it? So if we go towards only natural explanations, then that becomes atheistic fanaticism. On the other hand, if we say only supernatural explanations, then that becomes religious fanaticism. We are not anti-science. We accept science, and we also accept that there are principles beyond science. So even the Vrajavasis, they saw Krishna lifting over the Nil. When they saw Krishna lifting over the Nil, they saw it and they delighted in beholding Krishna. But after that, the Vrajavasis come and ask Nanda Maharaj, how did Krishna lift Govardhan? So they are not just completely illogical. They know that a hill is not an easy thing to lift. And how could a child lift a hill? So it's not that they were so naive and gullible, they believed anything and everything. They had a logical question. But Nanda Maharaj said that, actually Garga Muni told me that he is as good as Narayan. And now they were open to supernatural explanations. So the idea is, some people may ask, when Krishna lifted Govardhan hill, if you have to lift an object on a finger, if I have to put this phone, I can't even put the phone over here, it'll just fall off. But if I were to put it here, I'll have to find the center of gravity of this particular phone and keep my finger over there, then I'll be able to lift it up. So if somebody asks, how did Krishna find the center of gravity of Govardhan to lift it up? So Krishna doesn't have to find the center of gravity because Krishna is the source of gravity. So Krishna can suspend gravity when he wants. So Krishna's actions are what are often called as miracles. Miracles, they are not against science. We are not saying when Krishna lifted Govardhan hill, there is no such thing as gravity. That's not what we are saying. They are above science. Above science means that there is a natural system by which things work in this world. There are natural mechanisms. but there are supernatural factors governing those natural mechanisms. And sometimes those supernatural factors may override the natural mechanisms. So, in that sense, if we have to have the harmony of science and spirituality, we say there is natural explanation plus supernatural explanation. And majority of the time, throughout the history of nature, it is natural explanation that predominate. And in exceptional situations, there are the supernatural which override the natural. So, that is an exceptional situation. So, we accept the findings of science to whatever extent they are empirically verifiable and theoretically explainable. We are not anti-science. So, that's a long answer to the question, but I hope that it was sufficiently confusing that you won't ask anything more. Okay. Thank you. One question? Okay, sure. Anyone?
One question was based upon some science, if you have, based upon science, because now the topic is about science.
There was one question if... Okay. On the similar question about the moon mission, if you want, we can take that.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody was asking about the moon mission here written in a Google form. Is he present here?
Okay. So I remember the question. So Prabhupada said that man did not go to the moon, but there are so many missions which are going to the moon now. How do we understand this? So again, the point is, I have an elaborate video on my YouTube channel on this. So Prabhupada made 6 different kinds of statement about the moon mission. So with respect to moon, Prabhupada said we didn't go at all. That is one statement he made. But another place he made, we went but didn't access. He used the example there that if somebody comes from some aliens, some extras, so they come to this planet and they come in the middle of the Sahara desert and they look around and don't find anyone and go back. And they say that's a simplistic point, but they didn't access. Then he says that they were diverted. That they went out of space, but they got diverted. The Devatas took them to some other planet or something like that. That they didn't actually go to the moon. Then he also says that even if they went, so what? So what he says is, okay, you went so much and spent millions of dollars to get what? To get some dust particles from there. So what now, that is a particular argument, and we'll talk about the merits and demerits of that. But I'm not going to focus on that. I'm saying that Prabhupada made many different statements. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita introduction also, Prabhupada says, we have made so much endeavor to raise ourselves physically to the moon planet. Let us make a little endeavor to raise our consciousness upward. And we will get far greater happiness by that. So Prabhupada has given many different statements about the moon issue. It's not just one statement. So sometimes, like I talked about, absolutizing one statement. You shouldn't absolutize. Prabhupada said man did not go to the moon. Prabhupada said many things about it. So now what was Prabhupada's main point? Did Prabhupada start the International Society for Moon Conspiracy Exposure? That was not the point of Srila Prabhupada, isn't it? What was it? International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So the point is, Prabhupada's focus was on raising our consciousness toward Krishna. And in those times, in 1960s, 70s, there was the Cold War going on, and that Cold War led to the space race. Both Russia and America trying to get to the moon as fast as they could. And at that time, there was a lot of excitement, lot of pride, lot of hope of colonial conquest of the moon. That we will have, like moon will become soon a tourist destination. And everybody can go and stay over there. There were also people who were selling land on the moon. So a lot of things were happening at that time. So Prabhupada's point was, don't get so excited by this. This is not, even if we go to the moon, it's not going to make that much of a difference. So it's not going to make much of a difference if we have not raised our consciousness. So we shouldn't reduce Prabhupada's position to one statement and they say that this statement is incompatible. Now, is it possible for humans to go to the moon? Well, normally speaking, the moon, Prabhupada's consideration was that it's a higher planet. And we cannot go to the higher planet without having proper karma. But then we have Ravana going to the Swarga and conquering the Swarga. We also have Hiranyakashipu going to Swarga and conquering the Swarga. So, it is possible that certain situations where certain beings acquire some extraordinary powers and they can circumvent the normal ways things function. That is possible. Does it happen all the time? Say like somebody who doesn't have a visa cannot go to America. But there is illegal immigration. That's a big thing in America. That was a big election issue in America in the last elections. To stop illegal immigration. So, somebody may be able to get there. But once those who are illegal immigrants are detected, they will be deported. So, like that, even if we get to heaven, even if we get to the moon, what is the point? So we have to keep first things first. Prabhupada's focus was not on rejecting the moon mission. It was on rejecting the infatuation with the moon mission, because of which people say there is no need for spiritual advancement. And right now, maybe if you see historical ages, till you could say 1970s or 80s and certain 90s, that was called the modern age. Now, especially from the 90s onwards, and definitely it's called the postmodern age. And before that was the pre-modern age. That is before what they call as the scientific revolution and everything like that. So, in the modern age, science was the authority for people. The first question was, is there scientific evidence for the existence of the soul? Is there scientific evidence for the existence of God? Now, in the postmodern world, science is not that much of an authority. It is experience. Does this make sense? Does this add value to my life? Now, I've been traveling for 10 years in the Western world, and nobody has asked me this question. I often talk about the model of the self, where I talk about the body, mind and soul. Nobody has asked me this question, is there a scientific evidence for the existence of soul? Their question is primarily, okay, if this is the model of the self, how can it help me make better sense of what goes on in my inner world? How can it help me to help us to manage my mind and my life better? So, the focus is on what works. In the past, the focus on what is scientific. Like today is the World Meditation Day. Now there are some studies, some significant studies, scientifically researched and well published in big journals about the beneficial effects of meditation. But most people who practice meditation, it is not because they have read some scientific journal and they found that in scientific journal this made a lot of sense. They practiced it and they experienced it. Benefit. Now, the World Yoga Day is a huge event. Now millions and billions of people across the world are practicing yoga. It is not because so many scientific journals are filled with papers about the benefits of yoga. It's because people have practically experienced it. So the point I'm making here is, in today's world, spirituality is something which people are ready to explore and accept on its own merit. They don't need to have spirituality either established scientifically, or they don't need to have science refuted to accept spirituality. During the modern times, science was seen as a competitor to spirituality. That science will solve all our problems. Technological development will solve all problems. We don't need spirituality at all. So Prabhupada's preaching was at that time. So the moon mission was not just a mission of going to the moon. it represents a particular hope of humanity, which was actually a fantasy. That science, through technological advancement, will solve all problems of life. Now, today, no one is so naive that they believe that. There's a lot of excitement about technology. Whenever a new smartphone comes up, people want to spend a lot of money and buy phones, buy gadgets. But nobody thinks that, oh, getting the latest smartphone is going to solve all the problems of my life. So that here, science versus spirituality was there. And it is in that context that Prabhupada focused on confrontation. Don't get so excited with this moon mission. If you're not advancing spiritually, this is not really going to help you much. Today, science and spirituality both have their own space. So it is not that because India has gone to India has a Chandrayaan mission. Now we may have next one, Mangalayaan mission. It is because we have Chandrayaan mission, we have Mangalayaan mission. That's why there is no need for us to explore Indian knowledge systems. There is no need for us to study Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita. That is not the mood here. That there is an openness for spirituality and there is an eagerness for scientific advancement also. So there is no contradiction in people's minds today. So we don't have to harp on a contradiction that is not present in people's minds. So yes, if someone by some technological advancement can go to the moon, well, okay, what is the big deal in that? The important thing is, are we raising our consciousness? That is our purpose. Our purpose is not to, Prabhupada's purpose is not to refute particular scientific theories or scientific accomplishments. His purpose was to inspire us to spiritual growth. Okay? Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
So thank you very much, His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, for enlightening us. The very first thing what he started with a faith and doubt is like a brake and an accelerator. And both are required to go ahead in our journey. So that was such a wonderful explanation and he enlightened so many ways, so many questions were there. But in one question, he could actually shoot all other questions and answered all other phenomena, all other queries and all other doubts. So it was really a very enlivening session, Prabhuji, and very enlightening session. I'm very sure you must have this experience even earlier also. So keep tuning to our IYS channel and we will have ahead a lot of such sessions about the faith and doubt. This session was totally about the category of science and scriptures. Ahead we may have some other things, some other topics, and we are looking forward for your time and association ahead, Prabhuji. Very, very thankful for you for giving your valuable time to all of us. Let's thank His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu by loudly chanting 3 times.